Hello guys, gals and gamers, and welcome back to another video. This time we will be talking about Kirby and the Forgotten Land. But before we begin, I would just like to remind you guys to please like and subscribe. Also comment down below. I really want to start a discussion with my videos. And if you want to be extra nice, you can always share this video with your friends, family, and anyone interested in Kirby. Anyways, my name is Miko and I am a game designer. And recently we got an amazing trailer for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, actually revealing that is coming very soon in March, in just a few months from the release of this video. And the game just looks wonderful. That's all I have to say. It looks wonderful. Looking at it makes me happy. Kirby games are just full of joy, they're cute, and it's just nice to get a fully 3D Kirby game. But that's the weird thing. It's Kirby's 30th anniversary, and we're only now getting a fully 3D Kirby game. What's up with that? I know that we have gotten other 3D games, they have been spin offs, but they haven't really been like main series games. So I was thinking it would be fun to explore this topic, to look at this topic, in my opinion, chronologically, because that makes sense, okay? We will be going console by console and only talking about some of the games, not all of the games, focusing on main games, but also talking about some of the spin offs, if it makes sense. And skipping also some of the consoles like NES, SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, DS, mostly because of tech stuff. I know that the DS could handle 3D a bit, but the other consoles couldn't. And, well, the DS 3D effect wasn't that great, to be honest. And also skipping the Wii U because Nintendo barely did anything with that console. And for my understanding, there wasn't really any 3D Kirby projects in development for that console, so I will be skipping through that one as well. It only got one Kirby game in general, and that was like Rainbow Curse. We should get started. Enough of me just blabbering on about the structure of this video and the intro. Let's start with our first console, and this was the Nintendo 64. So the 64 era is where we will begin. Now, 64 was also, of course, like very well known as kinda where with Nintendo 3D games really started to get popular. We had like classics like Banjo-Kazooie, Mario 64, Ocarina of Time. 3D was everywhere. It was like really amazing if you even saw like 2D game that used sprites on the Nintendo 64 because those really didn't exist. And the Kirby game we ended up getting for the 64 was, of course, Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards, or just the Crystal Shards, I think it is called. And it's not really a full 3D game. It was really 3D at the time, but it's more like a 2.5D game, meaning that the graphics are definitely in 3D and there's three-dimensional things going on, but the gameplay itself takes place on a 2D linear path. So you can't run wherever you want. It is a set path that you have to run on. That makes sense? I hope it does. So why not full 3D? We can't really know for sure, but I can only like speculate. And I think the main reason for why it was 2.5D instead of like fully 3D or something like Mario 64 was just because it would be like simpler to do it like that. The target demographic for Kirby is often like very young. The games are like very easy in difficulty. Like even if you play any Kirby game, you can probably clear most of the levels on one try if you know what you're doing, of course. So it's a very low difficult game, but that's part of the charm, you know? And at the time, 3D was still very new, so could have seen that 2.5D would be easier for the kiddos and the young people or the people playing Kirby to understand, and they could not think of a better way to adapt the gameplay. So 2.5D. It worked and it was great. So let's go with that one. And they did go on with that idea, including with the GameCube. Now you might be thinking to yourself, hold on a minute, GameCube only had one Kirby game, and that was Kirby Air Ride, which was in 3D. It was a spin off racing game. And actually, the development for that game began on the N64, but then that project was cancelled and then later on revived for the GameCube. But there was another project that they were working on for the GameCube, and this was a 2.5D style Kirby game, much like Crystal Shards. And this game was called Kirby Adventure, not to be confused with Kirby's Adventure for the NES or Kirby's Adventure for the Wii, which is also known as Return to Dreamland in other areas, but in Europe it is known as Kirby's Adventure Wii. And this GameCube game was unfortunately cancelled. Development issues, and the reason I have found out why it was cancelled was apparently due to quality issues, so it didn't really go anywhere. And I think that game was later on worked to be Return to Dreamland, the Wii game that we got. Speaking of the Wii era, this is where things got really interesting, if you ask me. Because we got a few games for the Wii. We got Return to Dreamland, like I mentioned, and also stuff like Kirby's Epic Yarn, which used to be a new IP for Nintendo, but then they made Kirby a part of it for some reason, and so on. But the interesting thing was that there was actually a full 3D adventure in development for Kirby. In 2009, we got a financial briefing from Nintendo that listed a game called Hoshi no Kabi. This translates to Kirby of the Stars, which is actually the same name as the Kirby anime in Japan, so that's very interesting. I don't know if those games would be like connected in any way, but they shared the same name, at least in this point of development. It was a temporary name, so maybe they could change it, but maybe not. But there isn't really much we know about the game, except there is a screenshot, very blocky looking 3D environment with a lot of Waddle Dees grouped up in one. And Kirby himself, I think it's himself, I'm not sure if Kirby has gender. Kirby having the sword ability, Sword Kirby. So that is interesting about it, but there's really not much we know about this game. But it was cancelled due to quality issues again. It just wasn't up to Nintendo's standards. And I'm quoting this. It was cancelled due to extremely challenging gameplay. You might be thinking, what the heck does that mean? Well, challenging gameplay probably does not mean like the game itself was difficult. This was not the Dark Souls of the Kirby franchise. That will never happen. But to really explain what it means, this challenging gameplay, I would have to explain one of the biggest reasons we have not had a 3D Kirby. And that is, it's just been very difficult to adapt the 2D series into 3D. And the problematic part here seems to have been like adapting stuff like flying. Kirby can usually in 2D games just fly freely anywhere. That you have to have some way of dealing with that. Copy abilities have to be reworked to 3D, and that includes also attacks like sucking in enemies and blowing them out. And then just making the game suitable for the intended audience. Like I said, Kirby is for very young kiddos. It's made to be easy for a reason. Of course, there's nothing wrong if you are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 and still enjoy Kirby. Kirby's for all ages, but it's made easy so it can be approachable for everyone. And then balancing the game to still be fun. Like we saw in the Wii cancelled game screenshots, it looks very platform heavy and a lot of place where you can just like, if you could fly anywhere easily, you could just fly off the stage and die a lot. So that kind of level design definitely would not work. And I think that's what like challenging gameplay means, that the mechanics and the design were just a bit too complex for what they were going for, what they wanted to go for, and they could not figure out how to do it properly at that time, and then probably some other like develop issues. So they canned the product. But then the 3DS era came, and I think this is the golden era of Kirby, really. It was a less powerful console compared to the Wii, and the trend of 2.5D adventures continued with games like Kirby Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot. And honestly, those are like perfect 2.5D platformers, and they really nailed the Kirby formula with those. And the interesting thing here is they still did not forget about 3D, because in Planet Robobot, one of the like mini games was called 3D Rumble. And if you look at the screenshot of 3D Rumble, in the game you just battle in 3D against enemies. There's no copy abilities there, and you can just suck in enemies and spit them out. But it looks very similar, like how it is designed, to the Hoshi no Kirby screenshot. Both are like very blocky, and that's just what caught my eye. I'm not sure if they are linked in any way, and like I said, 3D Rumble does not have any copy abilities. Meanwhile, in this screenshot of Hoshi no Kirby, there's definitely Sword Kirby. So there has to be some connection. They carried over ideas from that third project to this minigame, most likely. And also, the minigame was popular, so it got later on released as a separate game known as Kirby's Blowout Blast on the 3DS eShop. So we kinda got another 3D Kirby game there. And during this era, I think they continued with the 2.5D games for a few reasons. One of them, it obviously worked, and they made fun games. And second one is just Nintendo does like doing 2D games. Compare this to other like big publishers, Square Enix, Capcom, Sony, Microsoft. They really don't do that much 2D games. Some like fighting games maybe, but not like full on 2D platformers and like that. Especially like Sony and Microsoft, they just don't touch those at all. Indie games are just fine enough for them. But Nintendo still has like New Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong Country, Metroid Dread, another 2D game. Metroid Dread, of course, wasn't at the Wii era, but you know. So yeah, Nintendo still does like making 2D games, and if they worked well, the Kirby games were very well received and sold well, so why change that? Well, the why change that obviously has to come after Star Allies, another 2.5D adventure, but this one releasing for the Switch. But that wasn't so well received anymore as Planet Robobot or Kirby Triple Dibble Deluxe. So it ended up with a mixed reception, and it just wasn't working anymore, that formula. They wanted to do something different, and now they did something different. And we have gotten ideas and projects for Kirby throughout time, but this is where they finally got the chance and the opportunity to make it. So I'm really happy about that, and Forgotten Land has a clear improvement on like the previous 3D projects that we have gotten. It looks like Kirby game. There is copy abilities. They have very large hitboxes for sucking in enemies and all of the attacks. So it will be easy to hit all of the enemies, which is good for a game designed for all audiences or kids. It will be easy. The areas are open. No more blocky design that would require a lot of platforming and has a lot of chances to fall off the stage and die. That's not good for Kirby. And minimal platform in general in Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It's just very plain. There are a few enemies in here and there, but there's not much like tricky platforming like you would have in Mario 3D World. So that works out really well. Also, flying, the Kirby's flying ability has been really nerfed or reduced in how good that is, because in previous games like you could just fly around anywhere, but in this new one you can clearly see you can only go up to a certain height with your flying abilities. You can still fly endlessly, but to a certain height. So that is really good. They have seemed to really figure out what they want to do with this one, and I'm really excited for this. Like I said, the game, just looking at the trailer, makes me happy. And I'm really wishing the best for this game. I hope it really works out well. But now I want to hear what you think. Please let me know down in the comments below. What do you think about 3D Kirby games? Would have would you have wanted a 3D Kirby game sooner? This might have meant that we would have never gotten Triple Deluxe or Planet Robobots, but do you think the sacrifice would have been worth it? And what do you think about Forgotten Land in general? Are you excited for it? Are you going to buy it day one? Let me know. But now I have nothing else to say here, so I will just see you guys next time. Bye bye.